Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everybody, it's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. This is the only podcast where I cover every episode of the Sunbow cartoon, DIC Even Extreme, and every issue of Marvel's Real American Hero, G.I. Joe comic book, page by page, panel by panel. It's another episode this week of You on Joe. You, the G.I. Joe fan who loves America's favorite fighting force. You are the star of the show and your specific favorite aspect of the G.I. Joe team. As some of you love the cartoons, some the comics, most of you really love the action figures, so everything and anything with G.I. Joe is up for discussion on You on Joe. So if you want to participate and be a guest, please reach out to me on social media. It's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at JoeOnJoePod, or send me an email to joeonjoepod@gmail.com and let me know what topic you'd like to cover. The more specific, the better. And while you're online, please give us a rate and review on your podcast app. Every review helps. It helps grow the show, helps people learn more about the show, and therefore we get more interesting guests. And if you're so inclined, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/JoeandJoePod, and you help keep the show afloat. Speaking of that, give some love to our fabulous sponsors, the Movies and a Meal podcast. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies and a Meal podcast. The Movies and a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews. They do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies and a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies and a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. This week on You on Joe, we are breaking ground in two different ways. So not only are we covering an entire arc worth of comic books, which I have never done on the show. I've always gone issue by issue, page by page, panel by panel. So this is a stretch, but we are also fast forwarding quite a bit. We're jumping 10 years ahead of the last time we talked about a comic book to the year 2006. And we are discussing issues 13 through 18 of G.I. Joe America's Elite from Devil's Due. Listener Scotty Cameron reached out to me, and he claimed this arc as his absolute favorite, and I can definitely see why. It was his entry into the G.I. Joe universe, and he was lucky enough to get an excellent arc of stories to introduce him to G.I. Joe. Now, it's a little bit background on these issues. The Joes had been reduced in overall force size. General Hawk had recently been shot in the spine. Duke was on a global mission searching for clues to Cobra Commander's plans. And Snake Eyes was just recovered as being a brainwashed agent of Cobra. Most importantly, however, Cobra Commander had inserted himself into the White House as the POTUS's chief of staff. Writer Joe Casey brings his formidable comic book writing chops to this arc. He uses some tried and true superhero tropes that, when applied to the real American hero, it lands with really great effect. So if you're a fan of the comic book Thunderbolts, you're going to love this arc of the comic. So sit back and enjoy as Scotty Cameron and I dig deep into the return of Cobra Commander. That's great.
I know the Long Box Crusade, when they bring in their special ops guests for G.I. Joe Chronicles, the Devil's Due years, they give them a code name and do like their G.I. Joe origin.
Hey, listen, I never claimed to be original. I just claimed to be a good time. That's all.
Well, yeah, in your podcast, like I've gone back and listened to like your podcast started before Long Box Crusade did the Devil's Due
Sure.
So.
Well, I support, and I mean this. I support and I cherish all Joe podcasts. I've said this on other episodes. I actually don't listen to other Joe podcasts with a couple exceptions when I'm if I'm
they
a guest.
plugged your show.
Oh, that's great. Oh, and I appreciate them, and I'm happy to give them a plug. Longbox Crusade, that's amazing. And I love them, and I love chatting with people online. I genuinely don't do it for creativity reasons. I don't trust my brain not to steal, you know.
Yeah.
So if one day if you're like if I start talking about all these great G.I. Joe podcasts to listen to, that usually means I'm out of ideas.
Yeah.
But it's great. I love the G.I. Joe podcast community, man. So speaking of that, how did you get into G.I. Joe, Scott?
Well, when I was like in second grade, I like watched Saturday morning cartoons. Like I mostly like watched Kids WB because the Batman was on there, and that was like my favorite cartoon at the time. But then like once the Kids WB cartoon hour was over, I'd flip the channel and I'd start watching a G.I. Joe cartoon. I'm 90% sure it was Sigma 6, but there's like a 10% possibility that I was watching reruns of the DIC cartoon.
Uh-huh.
And then later on, I saw.
Here's how we settle that argument. Did they all have terrible Canadian accents?
I don't remember that well.
Because if they had terrible Canadian accents, then it definitely was DIC.
Then it probably wasn't. It was probably Sigma 6. Because that would have been on at the same time as The Batman.
Yeah, sure.
And so I didn't really know the character names. I just knew Cobra bad guys, G.I. Joe good guys.
Right.
And then when I saw Rise of Cobra, that's when I started learning the character names. And then like in the run up to Retaliation, I started reading the comics, and I saw Retaliation in theaters my freshman year for my birthday. So
that's great. So you're the one person that the movie's hooked onto G.I. Joe.
Yes.
We found him. Gang, we found the one. That's great. I love that. You are what the creators of all those, we poke fun at them, but you're what those creators wanted. You want those creators wanted someone to see this franchise and go, I love it. I'm on board. And I genuinely think that's awesome.
Yeah, and in retrospect, it's like those movies weren't that good, but at the time it was like I was like 9, 13.
Oh man, it was all we had, and that's for a 9 or 13-year-old, I think I think that first movie pops. I really do. There's I mean, I got a lot of I hate to say like I got problems with it because whatever, it's a movie, it's not emotional difficulties, but there's issues that I have with the execution and choices they made and whatever.
Yeah.
But there are some sequences in that movie, that first one even, that just really pop. And if I were a 9, 10, teenager, I would absolutely be on board 100%, especially if I didn't know anything. Like if I didn't know what I was missing by all the cool stuff, all the stuff that bothers old man Joe. If he didn't know that all the cool stuff was left out of the movie, I would be like, that's pretty cool. I'm on board. And then you open up the comics, like you said, and you see, oh, there is a bigger world. There are all these cool things. There's more characters. There's cool costumes. There's, there's a bigger, broader universe than just this, flat gray and green and black universe they gave us. Oh, I'm in. So that's awesome. And Scotty, these days you are a student at the was it UMKC?
Mm-hmm.
And you're what are you studying there?
Political science.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And how are you loving it? How are you loving it?
It's going well. I've been doing well. Gotten letters from the dean letting him know I'm on like the dean's list and all that.
Oh, congratulations. It's important. That's really cool. Well, today you reached out to me and you said, hey, Joe, I want to participate in You on Joe, and I want to talk about America's Elite.
Yeah.
Issues number 13 through 18. Now, this is an era that I've not yet covered on the show. It's also a story arc of comic books, which in the over 300 episodes of Joe on Joe that I've done, I've never done a story arc of comic books before. So we are breaking ground here, Scotty. Why did you choose to go with 13 through 18? What about this spoke to you that you wanted to cover?
A lot of it is like nostalgia. Like America's Elite was like the first G.I. Joe line I'd read. and I was reading that in the run up to Retaliation, and this arc very much influenced the Retaliation film.
It did. I was absolutely thinking the exact same thing as I was reading these.
I mean, we got Cobra Commander
in the White House. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there that I do think they use as reference, which is we'll get into this in a bit. It's wild when I think about that. This came out in it's got cover dates of July 2006, so it was probably actually on the stands around like maybe April or May of 2006. And so you would have, how old would you have been then?
Well, I was reading this like my freshman, sophomore years of high school.
Yeah.
Like reading this through like trades that I checked out.
Oh, so you weren't reading this when it came out. You read this. Oh, we're right, because this was before the G.I. Joe movie, so you weren't into G.I. Joe yet.
Wasn't as into G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I knew like a rough, like anytime I saw like a G.I. Joe cutaway in Family Guy, I was like, oh, it's a G.I. Joe thing. But it's like when I saw like the Cobra Commander, you have to censor television, you fools. I called him King Cobra, not realizing his name was actually Cobra Commander.
Oh, you were just shilling for the malt liquor brand. I get it. I understand. Well, this came out in 2006 in it actually at a really, really hot time for comic books. Just a real quick reference. We're not going to do a full rundown, but DC had just finished up their Infinite Crisis crossover, and they were starting their 52 series, not the new 52, but the actual series called 52, which was a weekly comic series. That was a huge event.
Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman were just taken out and focused more on.
Exactly, on the B-level characters. So that was a huge moment for DC at the time. Superman was right in the middle of All-Star Superman, the great Grant Morrison kind of
Oh, I have that, actually.
It's an amazing run. So DC was doing a lot of really good stuff. Like that's a solid era for DC. And over at Marvel, they were well into the Ultimate books. They were about 4 or 5 years into the Ultimates. Mm-hmm. And they specifically were starting this month, which is probably the biggest thing to even mention for them, was Civil War. So,
I have Civil War graphic novel too.
Right, which drove so much of the whatever phases of the Marvel Universe, the movies. Civil War started in 2006 with cover date July 2006. They also were in the middle of their Annihilation story. It's actually, my understanding is Annihilation itself hadn't started. These were the prequels. This was like a lot Annihilation Nova, Ronan, Silver Surfer, Super Skrull. So their space Civil War, so to speak, was getting ramped up. And the actual on Earth Civil War was literally starting with issue number 1. So like those are for both companies. Those are touchstone events. Those are really big moments. And in the middle of all this, here's G.I. Joe doing what I think it's fair to say is a Thunderbolts riff.
Like Dark Avengers, before Dark Avengers.
Sure, yeah, like Dark Avengers. Now, are you familiar with Marvel's The Thunderbolts?
Yes, it's similar to like DC's Suicide Squad, but not exactly the same.
Sort of.
Like it was started by Baron Zemo as Citizen.
Sort of. Like they've morphed it into that. But what originally was a group of straight up villains masquerading as new heroes. That took the place that replaced the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, when the Avengers and the Fantastic Four were believed to be dead. They were actually in the Heroes Reborn universe. And that's what we get in G.I. Joe America's Elite 13 through 18.
With the Phoenix Guard.
With the Phoenix, yeah, that's exactly what we get. And they even play it out the same, where they don't,
with like the new code names for like Snake Eater
and the readers, Firefly. And they keep the readers in the dark. They give the readers a couple hints here and there that certainly we know something's not up, because it's not G.I. Joe, and
we know that the Cobra Commander set this up.
Yeah, right. So we know that, but like there's a few little hints along the way that these people aren't exactly just random new people, but they go so far as to make straight up file cards for the new people in the back of these issues. Friday is Jennifer K. Larson, specialties. Mech is Timothy P. James, like they really went full kayfabe on it, and it's fabulous.
Yes.
Before we go any further, let's talk about the creative team. We'll just get this out of the way. So since we're talking about like 6 issues at once, it's pretty much the same creative team throughout. It's Joe Casey.
Yes.
It's Joe Casey on script. Very talented writer, part of the Man of Action crew.
Yes, I read some of his Batman and Superman stuff too.
I'm a real big fan of Joe Casey. He did some great stuff on the X-Men. Man of Action is behind the brains behind Ben 10, that show. You may have watched that when you were a kid growing up.
I watched it when I went to my grandmother's. I didn't have Cartoon Network on my TV growing up. So anything like Justice League Unlimited, Ben 10, SpongeBob even, I'd have to go to my grandmother's to watch.
He also had a really, really celebrated run on Wildcats. Literally off the top of my head, I believe it's Wildcats 3.0, which was a kind of a super spy riff take on the Wildcats team over at Image. And I've read those actually, and I'm not a huge Image / Wildcats fan and all that stuff. Those are really good issues. Joe Casey, I'm a big fan of. I think he's a very talented writer. So I forgot that he wrote these. This is a series that I haven't touched since I picked it up. So it's been almost 20 years. You know, it's been what, 26, 20, how many, 20, yeah, 22 years or whatever since I picked this up. How many? I can't do math. It's not 20 years. 18 years. That's it. So all of this for me was, it was like a foggy memory, you know? We've got Josh Meadors on pencils, Richard Zajac and LeBeau Underwood on inks. Jason Jensen did the colors. Brian Crowley letterer. Phil Host is the military advisor. Mike O'Sullivan was the editor. And special thanks to Tim Seeley and Robert Atkins. And this is published by Devil's Due Publishing. Shout out to Devil's Due, who we haven't covered any of this on Joe and Joe, but Josh Blaylock and Devil's Due took this franchise when no one wanted it, and they started with making T-shirts with G.I. Joe on it and selling.
Yeah, I listened to his interview on Talking Joe.
Yeah, they started with that, selling a boatload of T-shirts, and then and then they went, well, let's revive the comic book, and eternal kudos. You know, like it didn't last, and you know nothing ever lasts really. I mean, look at that. IDW just got it. Just lost the license themselves.
I think it was like 2008.
Yeah.
When IDW took over. My
recollection of this whole era was nothing but positive. I thought they did a good job with it, updating it. I thought they got top tier writers working on it, and you know, so and in rereading these issues, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Now there was a lot of stuff that I had to get caught up on because we were jumping in the middle of a storyline.
Yeah, obviously Lady J died in the previous Joe line, and then Hawk is sending like Duke and Spirit out to find out Cobra Commander's whereabouts.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and Cobra Commander is already enmeshed into the White House as
Garrett Friedlow.
Yeah, the chief of staff.
Which I'm assuming President and Vice President are Cheney and Bush, given G.I. Joe America's Fleet issue 9.
Yeah.
When you see not Cheney, but not Cheney, and Major Blood's crosshairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Cobra Commander's, the whole arc opens with Cobra Commander revealing himself to these other politicians and military, you know, military advisors, things like that. And just to drive it home, he slides the door open on a like a storage case where he keeps the rubber mask that he uses to be Friedlow. Mm-hmm. And that looks absolutely horrific, but it's great. It's great. And what I think is really smart here that Casey does with it is he's subtly telling us that we still haven't seen Cobra Commander's face. Because there's a way to do this and just say, oh, he's, you know, we've been looking at his face. He's just been pretending to be someone else the whole time. Nope. This is saying we still don't know, you know, Cobra Commander's face is still a mystery, etc.
He's pulling a Zartan.
Yeah, he's totally pulling a Zartan, which they hint at a little bit. He talks about, I had to get some technology from an old associate of mine. And then he pulls his pistol, and in the White House, he shoots these dudes. And and just they're done. That's it. Ball game. And we see him consulting with the president and all that stuff. Now, Storm Shadow is recuperating in the Rock, which the Rock
is the new base of operations.
Not Dwayne Johnson. However, Dwayne Johnson could be big enough to have a man recuperate in him. Just saying. Dwayne Johnson's a large man. So do you know what happened in the previous issue? Now, I get it from they give enough context and clues in this comic, which is a sign of a talented writer. So it makes me want to read the previous issues where Snake Eyes had gone rogue. When you read this, did you read this one before you read the previous ones, or did you start issue number 1? I
had been reading the line. In fact, I have like the first disavowed trades on me. So like what had happened is Satan had gotten like a hold of Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow's like informant in the Red Ninjas, and they're both hospitalized, Satan and the informant, which they had found like when they had broken like the mind swiping of Snake Eyes. They had found him wounded, who was like cueing Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow in on what the Red Ninjas were up to. And so Storm Shadow feels like guilt over that because this had happened when he should have been like monitoring what was going on. And so he takes himself out of it to like clear his.
Got it. And did Snake Eyes like run a sword through Storm Shadow? Why is Storm Shadow in the infirmary?
Yes, he threatened to kill like Scarlet, which helped break the Red Ninja clan's like control of Snake Eyes.
Oh, Storm Shadow threatened to kill Scarlet.
Yes.
Got it. And then Snake Eyes ran Storm Shadow through.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. Well, I got to say, Snake Eyes looks really great.
Oh, yes. I liked how Meadors created the Alpha Commando Snake Eyes look.
It's a good look. It's real.
Managed to take the ninjas out without taking Snake Eyes.
Yeah, it's real enough. It looks like it's real world enough, but also still attainable cartoon. I have a kind of a rule about we call them superheroes, but like comic book costumes, where I don't like them when they seem too attainable from a cosplay perspective. Like I want them to be a little fantastical. I want them to pinch in all the right places to where it would be near impossible to get it to look that good. I feel that he's hitting that with this Snake Eyes. Like you could go, I could cosplay as this, but you're never going to get as good looking as this. So we see that Snake Eyes is training, trying to find his mojo back. And he's the commando again, and they've done this a lot over the years. They've focused on him being the ninja, then him being the commando, etc. And then we're also dealing with General Hawk, who had gotten shot. Now, do you recall? I absolutely recall him getting shot. Was he shot in the early issues of America's Elite, or was it the final? It was the previous one.
A-Raw run beforehand.
Oh, okay, got it.
Because it was like his big showdown with Cobra Commander. Cobra Commander shoots him in the back,
right,
and then Baroness shoots Cobra Commander.
Got it. So this is them bringing Hawk back into the fold.
Yes. And he appears like in like the early issues of America's Elite, telling Duke that Cobra Commander's out there. And that's why Duke's in like South America trying to find Cobra Commander's whereabouts.
Got it.
And also the hunt for Cobra Commander one shot. He's communicating with Spirit, which is why we see like when Stalker, Roadblock, and Kamakura come, Spirit's captured. It's because Spirit was finding Cobra Commander's whereabouts.
I'm so glad
Cobra Commander gets to.
I'm so glad you're here with all this information, Scotty. This is why I do JoJo Illustrated sequentially, because I don't remember any of this. And if I'm not reading them sequentially, I would have forgotten all of it. And it's great. So, and then, as you say, we check in on Duke, and Duke is down in the Amazon, and he's near death, presumably from after the effects of the hunt for Cobra Commander, right?
Not the hunt for Cobra Commander is about Spirit. He's out in the Amazon because he was captured by a group of rogue bats controlled by a Crimson Guardman named Colonel Calvin, who's like gone rogue against Cobra and was like planning to fire a missile at Cobra Commander, which he discovers was targeted towards Washington, D.C. And that's how he finds out that the Cobra Commander is in the DC area, and that's why he needs to get back to the Rock to let
Got it.
Colton.
Well, in following that vein, the guys are in Peru, Shipwreck, and in the core group of America's Elite seems to be this crew of like Kamakura, Roadblock, Stalker, Shipwreck, Snake Eyes, Scarlet. You know what I mean? Like it looks like for this series, they kind of narrowed it down to say 10 Joes.
Yeah.
You know, versus the expansive team to just kind of go, okay, this is the crew we're rolling with. Well, they find Spirit, and he's in a Peruvian jail, and they rescue him. So this first issue is a whole lot of setup, and it ends with a really great reveal that, as a comic fan, immediately I went, oh, this is Thunderbolts, and I love every second of it. And it's the reveal that this the Friedlow guy has said, "Hey, I've got the answer. I've got the answer to G.I. Joe, and it's the Phoenix Guard. And here's their code names and their specialties. It's Halo, Friday, High Tide, Mech, Snake Eater, and and that's it. And then they need a strong field leader who is
General Ray.
General Ray. Now, I completely forgot about General Ray. Absolutely blank spot in my memory that they cloned Serpentor and turned him into a G.I. Joe. I know we talked about it on one of my episodes before. So when I saw him here, I was like, why does that sound familiar? And that's what it is. So he's a clone of Serpentor.
Yes, who's good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, morally on the good guy's side. And he looks like Race Bannon. For you Johnny Quest fans out there. Looks exactly like Race Bannon. So this is the Thunderbolts. This is the team of bad guys disguised as good guys, and they keep the readers in the dark about it until they need to know, which is great. Now Thunderbolts, they had a couple appearances before the first issue, or at least one appearance. I thought there was two, but at least one appearance before the very first issue, and then at the end of the first issue, they said they revealed who the Thunderbolts were, and that was a huge reveal, Scotty. Just so you know, you would have been.
I was born in 98.
98. Yeah, you wouldn't have been born yet. Thunderbolts came out in like yours were born, so whenever that was, 94, 95.
Yeah, that's like one of the things, like I have to go back and like find it.
It was, let me tell you this, it was an awesome reveal. Marvel did exactly a great job with publicity on it. They were pumping it as this is the new replacement. They weren't hiding the fact that the Avengers and the FF were still alive. It was a big deal that they were being done by the Image crew over in their own universe. But of course, they still need a team of superheroes to follow in the regular Marvel universe. So here we're giving this team the Thunderbolts. They appeared in an issue with the Hulk. I think they were in an additional preview issue of something else. My memory's blanking on that, but I think they appeared one other place. Maybe it was either a promo issue or like an anthology series. There was a brief appearance. So they were getting set up as these new heroes, and there was something, and they were smart enough to give you that there was something a little shifty about them, but they didn't give up the goat. And then that first issue comes, and they do a good job of saving people. Some of them are a little morally suspect. Some of them are great. And in the very final pages, they all unmask, and they reveal themselves to be existing long-term villains that we've been hating for the last 30 years at that point. 20
I know
years.
Citizen V is Baron Zemo.
Yeah. And there there was Screaming Mimi, Moonstone, Atlas. Atlas was, the old Power Man. The Beetle, the long time, like one of the earliest Marvel villains, laughable at the time with his costume, the Beetle. He was Mach 5.
Was he like Mech 47? Was that
Mach 5? Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, that's what
Yep.
That's the other one.
Really, Kurt Busiek dug deep into the G.I. Joe into the Marvel history. Not that they were obscure villains, because they were all known. Most of them were known names, but like he really said, no, let's not just do dudes that have been around for a couple of years. Let's take old school Marvel villains and people that have been around for at least 15, 20, 30 years. And make them into heroes and see what happens. And it was fabulous. And it was a great reveal. It was one of the big surprises of the 90s. I think the other really great reveal was Magneto as Zorn was another huge moment of the 90s for reveals. So that's what G.I. Joe's doing here with America's Elite, except they're, and they tease it out. And I thought they do it to great effect. I really enjoyed it. So like, most stories, you introduce your characters. Now next issue, you got to see them on the job.
Yes.
Yeah. So they attack a Cobra facility, and the panel
beat the Joes to the punch.
Yeah, the panel of the Cobra trooper with his eyes wide open, surprised that he's getting shot to death. It's like page 3 of issue 14. That panel says it all. Because if they were Cobras, why are they killing Cobras? So the shock on that guy's face, now I'm not saying he knows they're Cobras, but that shock that works well for the reader as well as it does for that character, that Cobra trooper getting murdered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's driving home, hey, if these guys are Cobras, why are they straight up killing other Cobras? Oh yeah, no, they're killing Cobras. Maybe there's something more. Maybe it's not as simple as, a Thunderbolt switch, which again, really smart on Joe Casey's part to do that. There's no hijinks here. They're not shooting blanks, right? They're not taking prisoners. They're straight up killing.
They're not shooting non-lethal rounds.
Right. Yeah. They're killing Cobras. Now they do definitely lean on their specialties. And so I think for me,
Mech like throwing an explosive
Yes.
into the field.
Yeah. For me, Mech was the one, even in the character design, when I saw him, my brain went, oh, these are Cobras in disguise.
That's Scrap Iron.
Yes, he was the first one I identified, and then I didn't want to Google it. I wanted to be surprised, but he was the first one. I was like, that's got to be Scrap Iron. It's absolutely got to be Scrap Iron. So they take it over, or the Phoenix Guard is victorious. We check in on Duke's victory or Duke's victory. Sorry, Duke's recovery rather.
Yeah, he's escaped the Crimson Guard and found some people in Bovista.
Mm-hmm. Boa Vista, which I like, is like like a snake, like a snake reference, which is great. Spirit is essentially doing what Snake Eyes used to always do, and he's going into the mountains to recover. Meanwhile, the Joes show up at that facility that just got attacked in the beginning of the issue, and they see they're late,
completely like what happened here?
Yeah. Like they see some remnants of Cobra, so they know it was there, but they say something like, it was a great line. It's a matter of timing. Oh yeah, he goes, are you sure about that? Shipwreck says, you sure about that intel report? Personally, I think we might be a little late for the party. And Stalker corrects him, rightfully so. That wouldn't be an intel problem, Shipwreck. That'd be a timing problem, which is, I love accuracy like that. Because it's right. Mm-hmm. He's right. It's not an intel issue. But now we see, the reader, we've known that the Baroness was being held, right?
Yes, because like early on, Joe Colton and Duke take Storm Shadow to the Baroness to find out what she knows about these attacks early on, like the 9/11-esque attacks.
And for the listeners, Baroness is essentially being held captive in the basement of the pit. Well, not the pit, the rock.
The rock.
But that, in case you're unaware, violates pretty much every clause of the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yes, very much.
And it's really bad on every level possible. This is Joe Casey doing, and G.I. Joe doing their version of Gitmo. Detaining an enemy combatant without proper charges, without proper access to, lawyers and things like that. So this is not a good thing. This is to have the Baroness in captivity, secretly in captivity, is not good. They can keep her on premises, but they need to give her access to lawyers, like all the various constitutional rights that she should have. They're not doing that. That's the problem.
Yes.
Yes. And in this issue is when the cat really kind of gets out the bag, because the president and Cobra Commander / Friedlow learn of this.
Yes.
Now, do you believe?
G.I. Joe himself shows her.
Yeah, Colton shows him. Now, do you believe that when the Baroness looks in Friedlo's eyes, does she know? Does she recognize that that's Cobra Commander?
I don't know. I guess she'd have to like look closely at his eyes because when he's in the hood, all you see is his eyes.
I'm gonna wager she absolutely does, because exactly what you just said. She has spent a lifetime only looking at that man's eyes. Right? If there's anyone on the planet that she should be able to recognize by just seeing their eyes, it's Cobra Commander. Now, granted, he has a face mask on.
Yeah, so I don't know if he also had like contacts,
right?
to
exactly
replicate the real Garrett Friedlo's eyes.
Exactly, and we don't know if he has contact lenses on. But let's just, if I'll put it out there like this: if he's not doing the whole contact lens thing, which would make sense that he would, because he'd want to match Friedlo's contacts, I feel like she knows it's him. That's my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if anything, I just do. I especially because that's all she's ever looked at. And then that issue ends with some more ominous warnings that the Phoenix Guard has another mission. And this time, they're taking on The Rock.
Yep.
Again, not Dwayne Johnson, the G.I. Joe headquarters. And again, really in a great kayfabe move, we get more file cards for the Phoenix Guard. We get a file card for Halo, whose fake name is Kenneth P. Leggett, something like that. And High Tide is Edward T. Johnson. And Snake Eater, Jason B. Lee. I like that they say most likely an alias.
Yes.
Although it could have been
Firefly was never given a real name.
Right. It could have been Jason Lee, star of Mallrats. So, how many times do you think you've read this series over the years?
I've read it a few times. Like I have like the first 3 like disavowed trades, which that's all the Joe Casey stuff.
Yeah.
Like when the Snake Eyes movie came out, like I decided to revisit that this era and some of my other like G.I. Joe comics.
So this specific trade, you think probably
many
times, yeah. So earlier we were talking about the movie and influence and stuff. There was a picture in one of the insets of Snake Eyes, and it would have been they're drawing him in this run. So I don't have a reference for it, but it's the inset reference picture of Snake Eyes with his old school visor on, and it looks like you can really see his lips. And that made me think that they really were using that rendering of him, not just from the inset, but whatever issues that inset is from, that's what the artists for that first movie were using to reference, and it hurt my soul. It's almost
I think a lot of that is like from like the Tim Seeley, where like he's fighting Wrath and you can see like his face like grit.
Right. It's almost like you always, on almost all these, I want. Well, you know, I got to say I think that's why Marvel movies have been, so successful. Is that you have an overlord in Kevin Feige, to use the phrase, however you want to refer to him, but you have someone above that steps in and apparently, I'm not involved in that at all, but apparently can step in and go, no, that's not right. And no, that's not a way, that's not a direction that thing should happen, or that's not that costume doesn't look that way, or to keep it on track with the version that became so successful in the first place. That's why comic book movies and geek culture movies, whatever, failed for so many years, because you build up a head of steam with characters, and then when they would translate to movies or TV shows, the people making the movies or TV shows are like, well, we want to do our own spin on it. And it's like, no,
you don't want to be caught running around in yellow spandex, do you?
And it's like, no, dummy. The
Michael Bay Transformers.
Yeah, the creators
they look like piles of scrap metal.
The creators of the franchises that they're adapting, they did all the R&D work. They did the years and years of mistakes to refine those characters into something that everyone loves. So don't throw that out because you wanted to, quote, make your own version of it. You know what I mean? That's not the right way to adapt a beloved property. you need to embrace the stuff that people love, and work around that, because otherwise you're just repeating, because none of these properties, G.I. Joe included, like they weren't, every issue was amazing. G.I. Joe had some stinkers, and they go in some,
Snake Eyes dead game.
yeah, well, yeah, but they go in directions that aren't great, and then Larry Hama would correct course, or the Transformers, or they would do a line of Transformers that didn't work that well, so they would redesign them and make them a little more, classic or whatever. Like all that stuff, that's over decades of refining an idea and a thought to make something that then gets the eye of a multi, $1 billion franchise. So the balls to be like, I'm doing my own version. I'm like, oh, you're dumb. Anyway, we got a lot to cover here. So yeah, we got a lot to cover here. So we're on issue 15, and the crew is in the Rock, and they're chilling. They're playing cards. We're having some good moments with the characters, and we get caught up a little bit on Storm Shadow. Apparently, Shebang is still in a coma from that Satan fight.
Yeah.
But they write Storm Shadow out of the picture by sending him on a journey to rescue him. So that removes Storm Shadow from the fight, which is smart. I always like that when a writer's smart enough to intelligently write someone out of a picture, because that's one less bad dude that this Phoenix Guard has to fight, So now we're in West Virginia, and we're seeing we see what I first thought was an op, but then if you look closely, you realize that that's the Phoenix Guard. They're shooting at targets, so they're
training.
Yeah, they're training, exactly. And so you see how efficient they are, and you see them use all their weapons, and then you get to the almost the final page of their training, and you see that what they've been training this whole time is how to take out the Rock.
Yes.
And we end the issue with that Halo dude assaulting the Rock. So he's in the air. It's night. It's nighttime.
That gives away its wild weasel.
It's Halo. Don't spoil it. It's Halo, and the fight is on. Now we open it, and it's fun. So we ended that issue 15 with the fight is on, with like the assault is happening, and 16 picks up at dinner in Washington D.C. And we see that Friedlow is with his wife and kid, and they both think dad's acting weird, but he's just he's got a lot of pressure going on, and the reason is when you flip the page, this is a great comic book technique, storytelling. It's not a trick at all. It's just it's a wonderful storytelling technique. Super, super calm, super chill, a moment, and then you get to the next page and people are literally getting shot to death. Like it's a moment of extreme action, extreme violence, etc. And that's what's going on. So all these green shirts are getting shot and killed, actually getting killed in the Rock. So it's all like the support staff and things like that.
The green shirts, but they're playing the role of the red shirts.
Yeah, exactly. They might as well be the red shirts. It's funny though, because the red shirts are confronting them. The Joes are like, not saying they're hiding, but they're like huddled in this deep.
Look, Colton's Stalker and Scarlet.
Yeah.
Snake Eye.
Yeah. There are. Yeah,
I
should say that there's two groups. Yeah, there are two groups, right?
Because they were confronting Colton about the Baroness and how they feel that's unethical.
Correct. Yes, we skipped over that. They were giving Colton the business because Stalker and Snake Eyes and Scarlet showed up to the Rock to say, this stops now. Like, we're gonna stand for something. And I adore that it was Stalker that said that. Like, that was because it's great. It's totally in character for him. So we do have two groups, and the other group is like Roadblock and Shipwreck,
Kamakura.
Kamakura and those guys. We get a little reference flashback to the movie where Roadblock gets blinded. Do you know, did that I know later on in this he talks about his vision coming back to him. That didn't linger, right? He wasn't blind for a while, was he?
No, I think actually later on is in this arc. Vision comes back to him, but
Yeah,
he's like,
he talks about it coming back. I was just wondering if later on. We also star of GI Columbo and murderer in GI Columbo, Sparks. He gets shot up.
yes.
I don't know that we know that Sparks dies.
I think he lives because I think he's in World War III.
Is he in World War III? Okay. But Sparks
because like when I looked at Sparks's Comic Vine entry, I clicked on his appearance in this run, and it has him appearing in the issues of World War III. So I think,
yeah. So this plays out actually like a traditional assault the pit storyline, right? Where there's a pack of Joes and they're confronting Cobra on various levels, and it works really, really well. Meanwhile, Friedlo / Cobra Commander, he's back in DC, and he's like, well, now that I know that the Baroness is in the Rock, I'm gonna dig in because I have all this access. I'm gonna do some research, and he realizes that the Baroness was pregnant.
Yes, she had a kid with Destro.
Yep. And while all this is going on, a backdrop to this is Duke is flying his way back to the United States on a probably a drug smuggling plane, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Dr. Elizabeth Parker, who helped him recover.
Oh, yeah. She's all into Duke. And quite frankly, I think Duke's all into her, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the Joes realize that it's a domestic action. That they're not getting assaulted by Cobra. They're actually getting assaulted by U.S. troops. And everyone kind of gets cornered. Like they're prison. Like Phoenix Guard won is what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
they won. They took over the Rock.
They took the pit.
They took
the Rock.
The pivot. Yeah, they took the pit. They took the Rock. So now the Phoenix Guard is just chilling. Now we're on issue 17. They're chilling in the break room, where Race Bannon is, expressing his distaste for all the amount of people that these guys have killed.
Yes, he wanted minimal casualties.
Right.
He's effectively like Captain Atom in Public Enemies, where he doesn't want major force to kill Batman, Superman.
That's an excellent reference. You're totally right. And playing the role of Snake Eyes, we have Spirit, who is stalking through the Rock, making his way surreptitiously. So Snake Eyes, since he's now a commando, there's no one playing ninja, so that's what Spirit's doing. And Duke does a halo drop.
Captain America style.
Captain America style. It is so good. And he drops over it. Meanwhile, it's Colton, Snake Eyes, and Scarlet.
And Stalker.
And Kamakura? Stalker's, where did Stalker go? And he's somewhere.
Oh, he was shot by Firefly.
Right. Yeah. He got shot. So they're like, well, we got to bust out of here. So Snake Eyes makes his move, basically. And this is about the time when Friedlo basically tells General Ray that like the Phoenix Guard is the bomb. They're the new everything. You were chosen because you just follow orders. So don't stop following orders. And that's when he gets a little suspicious. And he
starts digging.
And he starts doing his own digging. And he learns that the Phoenix Guard...
We see the fouled cards for the Cobras and the Phoenix Guards.
We've got Zorana, Wild Weasel, Copperhead, Scrap Iron, and Firefly. And
then Ray's like, I've been duped.
I
gotta make this right.
I need to punch a screen. Which is always funny because, like, what'd that screen do to you?
Anytime a character's mad, you gotta punch the computer screen.
Punch the computer screen, even though the desktop is sitting next to it, and that's the one with the actual date on it. So this is the reveal for us. So now we know exactly who they are. We knew they weren't great guys, but now it's full on revealed. And also, this is the moment when Duke starts making his move. So Duke is going at it with High Tide, which is Copperhead. And Duke makes, I don't want to say quick work. It's a 2 or 3 page fight. It's a good fight.
I mean, he gets the drop on Copperhead, but it's still an engaging fight.
Yeah. And then then Ray confronts Mac Scrap Iron and is like, no.
The game's up,
Yeah.
Scrap Iron.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going
yeah.
to put things right.
Right. And here we go. Spirit and Snake Eyes actually meet up in the ventilation duct, so they're watching this all play out as Colton confronts Scrap Iron. So it's a lot of this plays out as this stuff plays out normally in these kind of assault things. Someone's trying to make an escape, they go out through, they escape through tunnels, things like that. But it works really well. They do a great job with keeping track of where people are. And then this issue specifically ends with the Baroness is now free, and she's pissed.
And she recognizes Zorana right away.
Right, because they hate each other. Like, they hate each other. They're not fans. So in the final issue of the arc here, we pick up with a little flashback to Peru 13 months ago. And we see the origins of this whole plan. And Cobra Commander talking about how they we see where they captured Spirit, and he's secured the technology from Zartan to replace Friedlo and all that stuff. So that actually gives us a good barometer for how long he's been in place. So he's been in place for about a year as Garrett Friedlo to make all this happen, which speaks to his long game aspirations, which I think works well.
Yes, that's peak Cobra Commander.
Peak Cobra Commander. And General Ray is about to get shot in the head, but he does not flinch. And I don't even think he's not flinching because he knows that Snake Eyes and Spirit are about to rescue him here. I think he just doesn't flinch because he's Serpentor. He's like, I'm not going to cower to you, Scrap Iron. What bothered me about this scene is that Snake Eyes knows Scrap Iron killed Softmaster.
Yes, with Firefly.
Yeah, we've never really gotten. He never, there was never any comeuppance with that.
Yeah,
that's the and I get it that to bring that into this story is a lot, but you would think that there would be a moment of Snake Eyes like giving him an extra love tap,
or like if he ever like spotted Snake Eater and like deduced that it was Firefly.
Yeah, like there's something of. Yeah, there's something there that I think they always, it just needs a little, there's always a personal connection there that I think they tend to drop more. And it's probably just to not confuse because that's a huge long backstory. So Zorana and Baroness, they get into it.
Baroness.
I was shocked. Baroness destroys her. I was shocked to see that Zorana's simply wearing a wig.
Yeah.
It was shocking to me. The wig falls off mid-fight. I assumed it was hair dye and or a nice weave, because how is that wig staying on throughout all this action? Is
yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a Gene Hackman Lex Luthor wig.
Yeah, just falls,
until he
falls right off. So that was shocking, her fashion choices. But we also see that the Baroness is I'll say unhinged, except she has every right to be, right?
She's been kept prisoner away from her child.
Yeah, kidnapped. Yeah, so I don't think it's unwarranted, but she is off the chain right now. She is, and she steals a Skyhawk and takes off. Like, the revenge that we're in for is going to be epic, and that's exciting. And what's really great about storytelling here is they set that up for future books. They set that up to make you want to come back for it, right?
Sins of a Mother arc.
Exactly. So now the president of the United States is kind of being woken up to be told, hey, we got a problem with this Mr. Friedlo guy.
Turns out he's been dead the whole time.
Dead the whole time. That's a great skeleton. Great drawing.
Yeah, when I first saw that, it was like kind of nightmare inducing at first.
Yeah, it's a little reminiscent of the you were always a bastard for telling I'm glad you're dead after the Joker fries that guy in his seat in 89 Batman,
Tim Burton Batman.
Yeah. So Friedlo's been dead the whole time, which is great. And that's when Cobra Commander's like, I don't need to pretend anymore. Like, I've already gotten all my tendrils are in your government, so you don't need me to be him anymore. You deal with it. And in The Rock, they're fighting their way out. Stalker recognizes Wild Weasel.
Yep.
I appreciate that they do things like they still keep Wild Weasel's face covered, because we never really
Yes,
saw his
I
face.
actually really like that Phoenix Guard design for him. I
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
wish they do like a Crimson Guardified version of it.
Do you know, have they
when
ever
he's like,
have they ever made action figures of the Phoenix Guard?
I don't think so. I really want them to do like, if they're gonna do like they already did Kamakura, they should make classifieds of.
They should, man. They should do, or yeah, they should do a Phoenix Guard version of this stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, that it might be a lot to ask for classifieds, because there's so many good. I mean, classifieds
Yeah.
a good line, but there's so many
Yeah,
mainstays.
the classified line brought me back to action figure.
Well, I'm gonna throw this out there, Super 7. I'm gonna throw this out there. You guys do these waves of people. Why don't you do a wave of Phoenix Guard?
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun.
hmm
I'm sure people have done customs. That's what's great about the custom group is,
Yeah, I've seen customs of
Yeah.
Ray online.
yeah, you can
Like,
almost guarantee people have done customs of
Yes.
almost everything. So they beat the Phoenix Guard. They quote unquote liberate the pit, although the Rock. The Rock is jacked up.
Yes.
Duke's back, and Colton makes a power play here, which I was. I mean, real ballsy.
Mhm.
Colton's basically like, yeah, I know I broke the Constitution. I know I violated all of your trust. But guess what? I'm in charge. So either deal with it or leave.
Nick Fury-esque.
He really does. He makes that move. It's really like my way or the highway, because stuff's about to get real, and so you're with me or you're against me, and that's it.
No more solo missions.
No more solo missions. So he goes to brief the president and tell the president that it's on and we're taking charge. And then we see in a great final page,
Cobra Commander with the Baroness's child.
More importantly, Destro's child.
Yes.
More importantly, Destro's child. But you never. I mean, listen. You don't want to incur the wrath of a mother, but. So man, that's a lot. That's good. That's a really good classic run of. I mean, it's using all the classic tropes of an assault story. It's using all the classic tropes of a subterfuge disguised as someone else's story. It's got enough tendrils to previous issues to make you want to read older issues. It's got enough forward-looking moments to make you go, "What's happening next?" That is a solid run of comic books.
Yes. It's up, like, given that it was like my intro to G.I. Joe, it's up there as one of my favorite runs of comics just ever.
It's dynamite. It's
Yes.
Yeah, man. Like I hadn't read this since I read it. So since 2006. Woo, awesome. Just that was really a fun ride. Oh, and we should note that the cover on at least the cover version that I have with them bursting out through the hole in the wall. That's very much a comic trope too.
Yes,
like X-Men.
It's the Phoenix Guard cover.
Yeah.
And then you see the Cobras bursting out as like the reveal.
Yeah, and that's an homage to Giant Size X-Men 1. And this is what I think you get when you get a very talented writer like Joe Casey coming into the world and telling good stories. I think there's room for more of that. I think there's room for more top tier comic writer talent to tell Joe stories. And I hope we get there.
Yes, because I know Larry's gonna continue Era, but at least like not like another like competing run, but at least do like mini series.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
you have these.
Exactly. Like I don't want Larry to stop. I absolutely be on the record saying that.
Me neither. I want him to do it as long as he wants to.
Yeah, but there are so many writers and creators today, and it was more so this era. This era was when the guys who grew up reading G.I. Joe started writing comics.
Yes.
So that's why you get really great stories like this. So to be honest, now the up and coming writers, I don't think they did grow up with G.I. Joe, but the Joe Cases of the world are still out there. Joe Casey's, he's still alive. Yes. Like there's a lot of veteran writers. They weren't upcoming. They were upcoming at the time when this came out, but now they're veteran writers that still love G.I. Joe and still have a lot of great G.I. Joe stories to tell. And I hope that we get more of that. And I don't know if the numbers are going to sustain it, but I really, really hope that we get more of that because I think I think what this series did was it really balanced all the aspects of G.I. Joe that we love. You know, it balanced Cobra, it balanced G.I. Joe, it balanced ninjas, some ninja action mixed in with some military action, with some subterfuge, with some political intrigue, you know, with a lot of personal dynamic politics. That's what I've always loved about G.I. Joe.
Yes, it's part of why it stuck with me, even if I've sort of come to like, the movies weren't that great. I still love the comics.
Yeah, man. It's so good. It's so good. Well, Scotty, this has been a real delight for me. Thank you for reinvigorating my interest in this era and making me want to go back and reread this era.
Oh, you're very welcome, Joe.
Yeah. Not that I was against it, but it just, you know, I hadn't gotten there yet. Now I'm going, oh, I got like 10 years to read to catch up to this.
Yeah,
What's next for you with G.I. Joe? Are you collecting the toys? Are you still just reading the comics, or what's next on your G.I. Joe collection front?
Well, I still like, if I find like good like comics at like my local comic shops, I'll pick them up. I started reading Reloaded from the Devil Studio, and I also read John Ray Nyber's Transformers G.I. Joe.
So good.
Tyrants Rise, Heroes Are Born, which is like
so good.
Yes. I want more World War II era G.I. Joe stories.
That was Jay Lee, right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I recognized his art from Batman, Superman, Worlds Collide when I picked it up.
We had a signing with him recently at Golden Apple Comics. First of all, really, really nice dude. And second of all, I am sorry, listeners. I completely forgot that he did that run. I would have absolutely got him on the record about saying how awesome it was and gotten a little snippet.
But yeah, I do collect some of the classifieds, like if it's a character I really love.
Well, Scotty, thank you so much. This has been an absolute awesome episode of You on Joe.
Oh, you're very welcome, Joe.
I'm so glad you reached out and said my favorite part of G.I. Joe is America's Elite 13 through 18. I think fabulous. You're the first person to take us to that era on this show. So kudos to you. You're a groundbreaker. Good luck at college.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man, I'm proud of you. You're doing it right. You're bettering yourself, and keep us posted on your accomplishments. Congrats on the dean's list and all of that stuff.
Oh, thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah, and now you know more about Joe, and Joeing's half the battle.